I froze the second I saw them out there on my pasture, spread out like a magazine ad for suburban luxury meets country charm. Picnic blankets and champagne bottles glittering under the noon sun. Kids waving neon ribbons like they were starring in some HOA-approved version of Coachella. And right in the middle of it all was her, Karen, Queen of Willowbrook Estates, holding a megaphone like she was delivering the State of the Union on land she did not own. She spotted me and waved like we were old friends, that smug, pageant-rehearsed smile stretching across her face, her voice slicing across the field as she yelled, "Happy Community Day, neighbor!" Like that was supposed to mean something. Like those words alone magically granted her trespassing rights and immunity from common sense. And I swear I felt my heartbeat slow in that moment, not from shock, but from that familiar kind of anger that doesn't swing in loud. It settles, cold and patient, like a storm sitting on the horizon waiting for the perfect time to break. Now, if you've never worked land, real land, not backyard turf grass or a decorative planter box beside your garage, you might not understand the way a fence line feels to someone like me, how it's not just wire and posts. It's a promise, a boundary, a history, my father's hands in the dirt, my late wife's favorite oak tree out back, my own sweat soaked into the soil through decades of early mornings and tired evenings, and these people, these clean shoes, champagne before noon, HOA clipboard. Warriors, they didn't just cross a fence, they stepped across everything it stood for like it was a polite suggestion. And I'll be honest with you, I've never been a saint about patience, but I've earned a quiet kind of tolerance out here, the kind you only get when your alarm clock is roosters and your neighbors are 1,500-pound bulls who don't negotiate. But patience isn't the same thing as letting someone walk over you. And there was a line in that grass that day, bright as the sun overhead, and they stomped right across it like toddlers in church shoes. I leaned against my porch rail, watching them with that slow boil settling behind my ribs, trying not to laugh at the absurdity. Champagne flutes, Bluetooth speakers blasting some bubble pop anthem, kids dipping their hands in my water trough like it was a community splash pad, a grown man in salmon-colored shorts taking selfies beside my feed silo like he discovered rustic living. And meanwhile, behind my eastern fence, all 35 of my bulls stood shoulder to shoulder, heads high, tails flicking, snorting dust like they already knew the story was about to turn interesting. And here's the thing, bulls don't bluff. They don't posture for pride or ego. They respond to energy, noise, motion, and stupidity, and that field was full of all four. I walked down off the porch slow, boots crunching gravel like a warning drum, not stomping, not rushing, just steady, because sometimes calm speaks louder than shouting. And when I reached the fence, I didn't have to raise my voice, didn't need theatrics, just said, "Afternoon, folks. Mind telling me why you're on my land?" Karen spun around like she'd been waiting for her cue on stage, oversized sunglasses glinting, straw hat big enough to cast shade over her ego. And she hit me with that syrupy tone people use when they think they're being gracious while being completely unbearable. "Oh, Cole, this space is for everyone. It's a community meadow. We're celebrating unity." Lord help me, I nearly laughed, because nothing says unity like ignoring property law and dragging 20-plus homeowners across a locked fence with a megaphone and rose spritzers. "It's fenced," I reminded her, slow and simple, "and padlocked." She shrugged, like property boundaries were an optional lifestyle belief, like gluten-free or intermittent fasting. "Well, the gate wasn't locked when we got here," she said, which was a bold lie considering I looped that chain myself that morning while my coffee was still steaming. Behind her, a kid squealed and sprinted toward the bulls, a bright balloon bobbing behind him like a lure on a hook. And I swear every muscle in my body tightened at once as I saw Diesel, my biggest boy, jet black, thick as a truck bumper, lift his head, ears forward, breath puffing in heavy clouds. Karen waved a dismissive hand like she was swatting a fly. "Relax, they're just cows." And there it was, the moment I knew we weren't dealing with ignorance, but arrogance. And arrogance will get you hurt faster than ignorance ever will. I could have yelled, could have thrown them out right then, but anger without strategy is just noise. And truth be told, there's a special satisfaction in letting someone walk right into their own lesson when you know you've done everything right and they chose wrong with their whole chest. So instead, I just took out my phone, hit record, pointed it right at her, and said, "Just so we're clear, none of you have permission to be here. This is private property. Karen leaned into my camera like it was a live interview, smirk shining with suburban confidence. Record all you want. It's public land. Public land. My land that I pay taxes on. Land with posted signs and fences and locks. I smiled. Not angry, not rattled, just that kind of half smile a man gets when the universe hands him the perfect setup. Well, I said, you go ahead and enjoy your community meadow. And I turned around and walked back to my porch. The bulls watching me like they were waiting for the halftime pep talk, my boots tapping steady like the countdown clock in my head, because right then, I didn't need revenge, I needed timing. Matter of fact, I made a pot of coffee, sat down at my old oak kitchen table, and pulled up the security feed, cameras catching every angle. The wine, the tent, the balloon, the kid almost climbing the fence like it was a jungle gym, and I saved every file with a neat little label. HOA Trespass, Exhibit A. I didn't rush. I didn't stomp. I didn't threaten. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let someone think they're winning while the walls are already folding in around them. And I promise you, I knew before that first champagne cork popped that if Karen brought her little parade back again, she'd be met by more than fences and polite warnings. See, revenge burns hot and quick, but boundaries, real boundaries, they're quieter, colder, patient like the earth itself, and nothing teaches respect quite like reality answering arrogance directly. I took one long, slow sip, stared out the window at those pastel-clad trespassers dancing on land they didn't own, and whispered to myself, almost like a prayer, "You want country life? You're about to meet the locals." And behind the east fence, 35 bulls breathed deep, tails flicking, earth trembling under hooves built for consequence. And I swear Diesel gave me a look that felt like he understood exactly what was coming. Because city folks talk about embracing the rustic aesthetic, but out here, we don't do aesthetic. We do reality, and reality is weight, and horns, and a very low tolerance for disrespect. I just needed to wait. One more sunny weekend. One more smug party. One more boundary crossed. And when it came, when it came, it wasn't going to be a yell and argue kind of day. It was going to be a reckoning. The next Saturday rolled in the way summer mornings do out here. Slow, warm, carrying that soft golden haze that makes the world look honest, like it hasn't yet decided whether it wants to be peaceful or chaotic. And I was already up before dawn, leaning on my porch railing with a mug of coffee steaming sweet and strong in my hand, feeling that subtle electricity humming in the ground like it knew what was coming. And look, I won't pretend I wasn't a little amused at myself. A grown man standing there like a sheriff in an old western, waiting for the out-of-towners to ride in and challenge the law. But sometimes truth feels cinematic when you're standing right in the middle of it, especially when you know justice isn't loud today. It's patient and hoof-heavy. Around 9:30, I heard the first wave. Engines purring, car doors slamming, laughter floating across the pasture like they were walking into a theme park called Rural Escape Adventure instead of trespassing on a working farm. SUVs lined up neat as church rows. White tents again. Coolers rolling across gravel. A bounce house. I kid you not. Halfway inflated like a swollen tick sitting by my fence, and standing dead center in a sundress that probably cost more than my first tractor's down payment. Karen. Sunglasses. Hat. Clipboard. Megaphone. Her triumphant HOA queen energy practically radiating like she was blessing the land with her presence. And then, the flourish. She lifted her drink, looked straight at my house, and said into that megaphone, "Welcome back to our community meadow. Farmer Cole has been so gracious to host us again." Gracious. Host. I let out a laugh, quiet, low, the kind that comes from a place halfway between disbelief and admiration for the sheer audacity of it. I walked down the porch steps real slow, boots hitting each board like punctuation marks in a sentence I'd been writing for 2 weeks. You don't respect my land. You're about to respect my reality. I didn't march over, didn't raise my voice. I took the long route through the pasture, nodding once at my bulls clustered along the east fence. 35 muscle-stacked mountains of patience, tails flicking, ears twitching, chewing hay like monks contemplating justice. And Diesel gave this low rumble, like the earth clearing its throat. Meanwhile, across the fence, someone cranked up a portable speaker, blasting upbeat pop music, and a group of adults started laying down charcuterie boards on top of my hay bales. Hay bales I bought, stacked and tarped. City fancy picnic meets rural reality. A man in salmon shorts. Always salmon shorts with HOA men. I don't know what pact they signed. Lifted his glass at me like we were toasting to shared property values and shouted, "You're a great sport, Cole." No, sir. Not today. I didn't step into the crowd. I just walked to one place, the North Gate. The same gate they forced open last time. The same one I accidentally left loose, like a single thread dangling from a sweater someone was arrogantly tugging, thinking it wouldn't unravel. I lifted the latch. Didn't shove it. Didn't swing it wide. Just lifted. And the hinge side opened like a secret being told slowly. A couple people noticed. Karen didn't. She was too busy posing with some kid blowing bubbles beside my feed trough like it was a curated backdrop she ordered from Pinterest called Farmhouse Chic Frontier Experience. But my bulls noticed. They always notice. I gave a soft whistle, one note, the kind that carries through air like a command carved into instinct, and all 35 heads snapped my direction at once, horns glinting under sunlight like polished promises. The first one pawed dirt. The second bowed his head slightly. And that's when Karen finally turned, mid-sip, megaphone dangling from her wrist like a toy she suddenly forgot how to hold. "What are you doing?" she called across the field, voice cutting just a little softer now, like someone turning down a speaker when they don't like the lyrics anymore. "Just feeding my bulls," I called back, casual like Sunday small talk. They don't like strangers in their space. Makes M territorial. A hush rolled across that little pastel crowd, like someone pressed mute on the world. The music kept playing, some bubbly pop chorus about good vibes and sunshine, but nobody was vibing anymore. Then Diesel took the first step. Heavy, purposeful, earth-shaking. Another bull followed. Then 3 more. And suddenly 30-plus multi-ton reminders of reality started drifting toward the open gate, dust swirling behind them like smoke from a slow-burning fuse. Someone whispered, "Are they coming here?" Karen swallowed hard. I saw it. That split second where entitlement turned into fear. She tried to laugh it off. Nervous, brittle. "They're fenced. Don't be ridiculous," she said, waving her hand like she could will reality into obeying her fantasy. And that's when Diesel's front hoof crossed the threshold of that gate. When over 30 heads lowered just slightly, breath puffing in heavy bursts, tails flicking like rattlesnakes thinking about striking. The first scream didn't come from Karen. It came from a dad holding a cheese platter shaped like a heart yelling, "Grab the kids." Then chaos bloomed like wildfire. Kids running, wine tossing, blankets flying. Someone dove into the bounce house and rolled out the other side like a frantic beach ball. A woman lost both sandals and dignity at the same time. And Karen, queen of curated control, turned and ran so fast her hat somersaulted backward into a bowl of deli pasta salad. The bulls didn't attack. They didn't need to. They just advanced with that slow, deliberate confidence of creatures who know exactly who owns the ground beneath them. Dust like smoke, hooves pounding like drums. A chorus of reality stamping arrogance into mud. I leaned against a fence post, one hand in my pocket, the other filming, and whispered, "Welcome to the country." And right there, right in that boiling mix of panic and dust and ego collapsing, I didn't feel rage or gloating or victory the way movies dramatize it. I felt balance. Because sometimes nature doesn't punish arrogance, it just responds to it. And as the bulls slowed, tails twitching, snorting calm again as the last HOA member scrambled out like a squirrel through a hedge, I walked up and latched the gate gentle, like closing a chapter. Karen stood on the other side breathing hard, hair wild, shoes gone, voice shaking with wounded pride as she shouted, "If you're going to pay for this." I looked at her as soft as a summer breeze and said, "No ma'am, that's exactly what you're never doing here again." Her power broke right then, not because a bull chased her, but because reality finally did. And me? I just exhaled slow, tipped my hat, and walked back toward my porch while my bulls grazed behind me like nothing extraordinary just happened. But we both knew something did. This land got its respect back, and she learned what fences are for. She didn't leave right away. That's the thing I always remember. She stood there, just outside the gate, breath sharp and uneven, dress smeared with dust and ego, trying so hard to rebuild the composure she lost somewhere between my fence line and the bounce house. She nearly dove through like it was a lifeboat. And for a brief second, she looked small, not physically, but spiritually, like a balloon that popped and forgot how to expand again. And I'll admit, a part of me felt almost human about it, not sympathetic, but aware that humiliation is a heavier weight than anger ever is. But then, just like thunder follows lightning, her chin lifted again, posture stiffened, and she snapped. "You will be hearing from my lawyer." I swear I almost smiled, because here's the truth about people like her. When reality hits them, they don't apologize, they escalate. They don't reflect, they rearm. So I just tipped my head, calm as the morning breeze brushing the oak leaves, and said, "Well, make sure he brings boots. Courtroom's clean, but those pastures ain't." She sputtered, spun on her heel, and stormed off, dripping mud and disbelief behind her like a trail marker for poor decisions. And when she left, the whole world settled again. Bulls grazing quietly, dust floating in low sunlight, the sound of a cicada breaking the silence like it was clearing its throat and saying, "All right, back to normal." Peace. Earned, not asked for. I sat on my porch later, boots kicked up, watching the replay footage on my laptop, cinematic dust clouds, pastel panic, suburban stampede, slow-motion flip-flops flying like doves at a wedding gone wrong. And I'll tell you right now, I didn't laugh at them, not really. I laughed at the perfect symmetry of it all. Arrogance meeting nature like two weather fronts colliding and letting the storm decide who mattered more. And just when the quiet started to feel like it had roots again, gravel crunched up my driveway. Sheriff's cruiser. I didn't flinch. Truth has a way of making you perfectly still. He stepped out slow, adjusting his belt, nodding once like men out here do instead of doing small talk. "Afternoon, Cole." "Sheriff." He pulled off his hat, wiped his brow. "Got a call from Willowbrook." I waited. Silence has weight if you let it. "They said you unleashed bulls on M." I raised one eyebrow. "That right?" He nodded. "But then they sent over video as evidence." He tried real hard to stay professional, but his mouth twitched like he was wrestling a grin. "Turns out evidence is 30 minutes of HOA members running like God opened the gates of the Old Testament." I shrugged. "They crossed my line." He nodded again, slowly. "Looks like the bulls just escorted them off property." "That's all they did," I said. "And the gate. Gravity must have helped." And that man, seasoned lawman, backbone like old oak, seen every kind of domestic meltdown this county could cough up, he chuckled. Not loud, not long, just enough to confirm the universe was working properly. "No crime here," he finally said, handing back the drive. "But I'd keep that footage somewhere safe. You might need it again." I tapped the laptop. "Already labeled and archived." He tipped his hat again. "Good. City folks forget sometimes, land remembers." And just like that, he left. No threats, no warnings, just a shared understanding carved from the same soil. That night I sat outside, the sky pouring stars across the darkness like someone spilled glitter on velvet, bulls settling into that deep pasture silence where even their breath feels like part of the night. I thought about my wife again, how she used to say fences weren't barriers, they were respect written in wood and wire, and good neighbors didn't fear them, they honored them. I stared at those fences, stronger now, almost shining in moonlight, and I felt something deep in my bones settle. This wasn't about winning. It wasn't about humiliation. It was about gravity, boundaries, balance. People think justice is loud, but sometimes the quiet after is the real victory. A few days later, a certified letter came. Thick envelope. HOA letterhead fancy enough to belong to royalty that forgot it only ruled streetlights and mailbox paint colors. Inside, a formal apology. A signed agreement the HOA would pay for fence repairs, field cleanup, and emotional and agricultural disturbance. And the cherry? A printed notice. Karen is removed as HOA president effective immediately. No signature from her. Just her absence. And that was louder than any threat she ever made. Word got around fast. Farmers talk, and truth spreads quicker than wildfire when it feels earned, not gossiped. Folks honked when they passed. Some left pies on my porch. One old rancher dropped off a salt block and just said, "For your boys. Good work." Even Willowbrook changed, not overnight, but like frost melting. People waved. Kids stayed on sidewalks. New HOA president swung by with store-bought cookies and humility in his hands. "We'd like to start fresh," he said. I nodded. "Start where the fence starts. You'll be just fine." And life went quiet again. Not empty, just right. Sometimes the universe gives you the chance to shout. Sometimes it hands you bulls and tells you to stand still. Either way, respect grows where lines are drawn and held. So if you're listening to this, and you've ever had a Karen cross your fence, metaphorical or literal, tell me below. Who was she? What line did she step over? And how did you handle it? Because out here, justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it rumbles under hooves, waits for a whistle, and teaches the lesson nature wrote first. Boundaries aren't hostility, they're dignity. Drop your story in the comments. Subscribe if you believe fences make good neighbors. And tell me, was I right? Or did I go too far? I'll be right here on the porch reading your answers. Coffee in hand, bulls in the pasture, fence holding firm. Welcome to the countryside. We don't shout here. We let truth walk on four legs.